It has been another historic week for spaceflight, with the development of the Ariane 6 coming to an inevitable end, and SpaceX safely bringing back astronauts from the Crew 6 mission. The stage is set for an interesting next few weeks. We do the research for you to give you a well-rounded update. Let's talk about all the latest industry news and rocket launches in this week's Roundup. To start things off, ESA and Arianespace have successfully conducted two vital tests for the Ariane 6 rocket, bringing it closer to its full development. The initial test occurred on September 1st at Lampoldshausen in Germany, where they conducted a full-duration test firing of the Ariane 6 second stage, simulating a launch. During this test, the second stage of the Ariane 6 rocket also actively employed its auxiliary power unit, mirroring its in-flight functionality. As a result, the second stage has now been comprehensively tested under expected and standard conditions. However, one more test is scheduled for this autumn, during which it will be assessed under degraded conditions. This additional test is crucial to ensure that the upper stage proves its reliability, even when not operating under ideal conditions. The second test took place on September 5th at the Guiana Space Center, involving the development test article of the Ariane 6 rocket. During this test, the main engines of the rocket were fired for a duration of 4 seconds. It's worth noting that this brief hot fire test had initially been planned for July and then rescheduled for late August, but various issues caused delays, pushing it to this week. During this test, both the vehicle and ground systems executed a complete countdown sequence mimicking the procedures leading up to a rocket launch. The rocket was loaded with propellant as if it were ready for an actual launch, and its main engine was ignited at the end of the countdown simulation. Following this successful test, preparations will now be made for a full-duration hot test scheduled for October 3rd. The successful completion of this upcoming test will signify that both the rocket and launch pad systems are cleared and ready for an actual launch. As the development phase of the Ariane 6 nears its conclusion, work is underway to produce the first flight article. This crucial component is anticipated to be transported to French Guiana in the early months of next year. ESA and Arianespace have made it clear that they will refrain from setting a specific launch target date until the successful completion of these two tests. Now let's discuss the rocket launches for this week. On September 2nd at 6:20 UTC, a PSLV-XL rocket took off from the second launch pad at the Satish Dhawan Space Center. This particular launch had a significant payload on board, the Aditya L1 solar observatory, which was destined for a highly elliptical orbit around Earth. The Aditya L1 satellite represents India's inaugural endeavor dedicated to scrutinizing the sun's activity and comprehending the dynamics within and between its chromosphere and corona. Following its successful launch, the satellite is currently in good health and positioned in Earth's orbit. In the next phase of its mission, the Aditya L1 will initiate a sequence of orbit-raising maneuvers to maneuver itself onto a trajectory aimed at reaching the Sun-Earth Lagrange Point 1, located approximately 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth in the direction of the Sun. This week, on September 2nd at 12:25 UTC, a Falcon 9 rocket launched from Vandenberg, California. Its mission was to deliver the final set of satellites from the Space Development Agency's Tranche Zero program into a polar orbit. Among the payloads on this launch were 10 Tranche Zero transport layer satellites constructed by Lockheed Martin, along with an additional Tranche Zero transport layer satellite made by York Space Systems. Additionally, 2 Tranche Zero tracking layer satellites manufactured by SpaceX were part of this payload. This launch represents the second of the 2 primary launches designated for the Tranche Zero satellite constellation. Later in the year, an additional 4 Tranche Zero transport layer satellites developed by York Space Systems are scheduled for deployment as part of a rideshare mission on another Falcon 9 rocket. Notably, the booster used for this mission, designated as B-1063, embarked on its 13th flight, and it accomplished a successful return, landing back on solid ground at Landing Zone 4. On September 4th, at 2:47 UTC, yet another Falcon 9 rocket was launched from Launch Complex 39A. This mission had the responsibility of carrying 21 Starlink 5.2 mini-satellites into low Earth orbit, contributing to the development of Starlink's second-generation satellite constellation. Notably, the booster for this mission, designated as B-1073, was on its 10th flight, marking it as the 10th booster to achieve this milestone. As per SpaceX's customary success, the booster for this mission also made a successful return to Earth, landing on SpaceX's drone ship named Just Read the Instructions. With the completion of this launch, SpaceX has now deployed a total of 5,048 satellites into orbit. Among these, 4,704 remain in orbit, and an impressive 3,979 are actively operating in their designated orbits. On September 5th at 9:34 UTC, a Series 1 rocket, developed by Galactic Energy, embarked on a significant mission. The launch occurred from the DFU 15002 barge, strategically positioned in the Yellow Sea. This particular mission involved the transportation of 4 Tianqi satellites into low Earth orbit. Aptly named The Little Mermaid, this launch marked several milestones. It was the inaugural launch of the Series 1 rocket from a maritime launch platform and marked the first maritime launch conducted by a private Chinese rocket. The Tianqi satellites play a vital role in an experimental Internet of Things (IoT) communications constellation developed by Guodian Gaoka. On September 6th at 1814 UTC, a Chang Zheng 4C rocket was successfully launched from the South Launch Site 2 at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in China. The primary payload for this mission was the third Yaogan 33 remote sensing satellite, which was placed into a sun-synchronous orbit. This satellite serves as an addition to the Chinese military's Yaogan satellite constellation, contributing to their remote sensing capabilities. This week, on September 6th at 2342 UTC, another notable launch took place from the Tanegashima Space Center. An H-IIA rocket was used for this mission, and it carried two significant payloads into space. The first payload was the X-ray Imaging and Spectroscopy mission, abbreviated as XRISM. The second payload was the Smart Lander for Investigating Moon, also known as SLIM. These missions represent important endeavors in the field of space exploration and lunar research. XRISM stands as the latest X-ray observatory jointly developed by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, in collaboration with NASA. This cutting-edge X-ray telescope represents a significant step forward in the field, effectively bridging the gap between existing telescopes like Chandra and XMM Newton, and those currently in development for future missions. Notably, XRISM also serves as a replacement in some capacity for the Hitomi X-ray Observatory, which was tragically lost in 2016. SLIM represents a significant milestone for JAXA, as it marks its inaugural lunar lander mission. The primary objective of SLIM is to showcase a novel and more precise landing technique capable of accommodating a broader range of terrains on the lunar surface. To achieve this, the spacecraft will undergo several weeks of adjustments in Earth orbit to fine-tune its trajectory. Subsequently, it will execute a low-energy trajectory maneuver around the Earth-Moon system, aiming to capture itself around the Moon with minimal fuel expenditure. However, it's important to note that SLIM's arrival on the Moon is not anticipated until the following year. Once in lunar orbit, the spacecraft will spend several months there before embarking on its ambitious landing attempt. Amid the various rocket launches this week, we also had a craft return to Earth. SpaceX's Crew 6 mission has successfully completed its journey, signifying the culmination of the company's initial commercial crew contract. The Crew Dragon spacecraft, named Endeavour, was responsible for transporting the Crew 6 astronauts to the International Space Station, ISS. On September 3rd at 11:05 UTC, Crew Dragon Endeavour undocked from the ISS after completing approximately 10 orbits around Earth. Following this, the crew members donned their spacesuits and securely strapped themselves in as they prepared for re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. The Crew Dragon Endeavour initiated a crucial 16-minute-long de-orbit burn at 3:23 UTC on September 4th. Approximately 55 minutes later at 4:17 UTC, the capsule made a successful splashdown off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. This mission marked a significant achievement for the three rookies aboard, Woody Hoberg, Sultan Al-Nayadi, and Andrei Fedyayev, as they have collectively spent an impressive total of 185 days, 22 hours, and 43 minutes in space. For the veteran astronaut on this mission, Stephen Bowen, his time in space continues to accumulate. With this mission included, his total time spent in space has now extended to an impressive 226 days, 8 hours, and 43 minutes. The completion of SpaceX's original commercial crew contract marks a significant milestone in the realm of crewed spaceflight, especially when compared to the progress of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. SpaceX has achieved notable success by consistently delivering astronauts to the International Space Station, whereas Boeing's Starliner has faced delays and setbacks in its efforts to carry astronauts to the ISS. Do you think the Starliner can ever catch up to the success of the Dragon? Please let us know in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and stay tuned for the next weekly roundup.